The Duke and the Unexpected. Book 1 in the Wild Hearts series. Chapter 1 The Library Scandal. London. Spring of 1815. Ball season. House of the Dukes of Halberton. Music floated in the air like expensive perfume. The notes of a waltz seemed to stitch together the whispers and laughter of gloved ladies and sharp-eyed gentlemen with golden thread. The ballroom brimmed with youth, ambition, and desire hidden beneath the masks of propriety. But Isabella Lane didn't belong to that world. She clutched her notebook tightly to her chest, slipping unnoticed among the servants. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was only the governess to the young Halbertons. And tonight she had come downstairs by mistake, searching for a lost pen, or so she told herself, to justify the curiosity pulling at her feet. Isabella was the daughter of a fallen baron, now a bystander in the world she once dreamed of joining. But what bothered her most wasn't the exclusion, it was the absurdity of it all. Watching brilliant women pretend to be foolish just to be considered marriage material. And then she saw him, leaning arrogantly against a marble column, surveying the room like an emperor bored with his subjects, stood Alexander Blackthorn, the Duke of Rivington. Tall, elegant, dangerously handsome, dressed in black, as if the color had been invented just for him. He didn't dance. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply watched and judged. Isabella frowned. What an unpleasant man. Curious. Miss Lane? Whispered a male voice behind her. She turned sharply, and her notebook slipped from her hands. As she bent to pick it up, her forehead bumped into someone's knee. When she looked up, she saw him, the very same Duke, staring at her with a mix of disbelief and amusement. The governess? He asked in a low voice. Or the social spy? Isabella stood up with dignity. I wasn't aware that looking was a crime. Your Grace. That depends on how long the look lasts. There was something in his tone that made her blush. With anger. I assure you, she replied. There's nothing in this room worth more than 5 seconds of my attention. Including you. The Duke smiled, and it was like seeing a crack in a marble statue. Dangerous. Far too dangerous. What a shame, he said. And here I thought you came to beg me for a dance. I'd rather dance with a trained bear. Much safer. No doubt, he said with a grin. But far less exciting. The conversation was about to cross the line when a high-pitched voice interrupted. Alexander. There you are. I've been looking all over the house. Miss Priscilla Wexley, one of the season's most eligible ladies, clung to the Duke's arm as if her life depended on it. Isabella stepped back, uncomfortable. She didn't want to be part of that scene. But as she turned, she bumped into a servant and stumbled backward, right into the Duke's arms. From the stairs, the scene looked like something else. It looked intimate. Silence. Isabella pulled away at once, horrified, but it was already too late. Whispers spread like flames in dry grass. And within the hour, all of high society would be repeating the same sentence, over and over, like a catchy new tune. The Duke of Rivington has compromised the governess. Chapter 2 An Unwanted Proposal. The morning sun rose with insolent brightness, as if the sky had no idea that Isabella Lane's world had just turned upside down. At the Halbertons' residence, breakfast was served on time. Maids whispered discreetly, and the society columns had already printed the juiciest scandal of the season, without naming her directly. England's most eligible duke seen in a compromising situation, with a lady not exactly of society. Isabella walked down the hallway, her stomach twisted in knots, her cheeks burning. She avoided every glance. She had spent the entire night trying to convince herself it would all blow over, that no one would believe such madness. But when Lady Halberton summoned her to the private sitting room, Isabella knew the moment had come. Sit down, Miss Lane, the lady said, without offering tea. Let's not waste time. Isabella obeyed in silence. Lady Halberton, dressed impeccably in navy blue, folded her hands on her lap. The Duke of Rivington will arrive this afternoon to offer you marriage. Isabella choked on air. Ma, marriage? Don't act surprised. The lady replied dryly. The scandal is enormous. Your reputation is ruined, and so is ours. You can no longer stay in this house as governess. And he, as a gentleman, has decided to repair the damage. But nothing happened, Isabella exclaimed, rising to her feet. It was an accident. I tripped. There was no intention or not. The lady interrupted. Your fall was convenient. The embrace too long. And the witnesses too many. In this world, Miss Lane, appearances matter more than truth. Isabella lowered her gaze. Not out of shame, but from rage. Marriage? To a man so cold. So arrogant. Who looked at her as if she didn't belong in his world. To a duke who didn't want a wife, only a solution. And yet, what was the alternative? Dismissal. Disgrace. Becoming a homeless outcast. And worst of all, leaving her younger sister Beatrice unprotected. At the brink of the workhouse. No. She couldn't fall. Not now. That afternoon, Alexander arrived precisely on time. Dressed as if for a business meeting. No flowers. No sweet words. Just him, tall. Imposing. And carrying a sentence on his lips. Miss Lane, he said with a slight nod. I've come to do my duty. How romantic. She murmured with sarcasm. I hold no illusions. He replied. You despise me. I won't pretend otherwise. But this marriage will prevent further damage to both our reputations. It's a contract. A clean agreement. You'll have a home. A title. Resources. And I. Peace. Peace? Peace from the tongues of duchesses. Believe me. They're worse than war. For the first time, Isabella studied him closely. There was something in his eyes. Fatigue. Pain. Loneliness. What was behind the perfect duke? And if I say no? You won't be able to say no. He replied bluntly. Your name is already in the papers. Doors will close. One after another. You may hate me, Miss Lane. But you can't change the rules of this game. She lifted her chin. Then if we are to marry. Know this. Your Grace. I will not be a shadow in your mansion. I am not a silent doll. I won't be your decorative ornament. Alexander looked at her, and for the first time in his life, he truly smiled. God spare me from a boring wife. Chapter 3 Until Scandal Do Us Part. The Duke of Rivington's private chapel was austere, silent, and as sober as the man about to be married in it. Isabella had never imagined her wedding would be so fast, or so absurd. There were no flowers. No music. No bridesmaids. Not even a smile. Just her. Dressed in a borrowed cream gown from Lady Halberton. Hands ice cold. Heart pounding. And a veil that felt more like a shroud than a promise. Alexander stood at the altar like a general signing a treaty after a long war. Impeccable. Unmoved. Unbearably composed. The Reverend cleared his throat. Are you ready, Miss Lane? As ready as one can be to jump into a river without knowing how to swim. Alexander raised an eyebrow but said nothing. By now, he had accepted that his future wife had the sharpest tongue in the kingdom. The ceremony was as short as decency allowed. No tears of joy. No dreamy sighs. No rice tossed in the air. To you, Alexander James Blackthorn, Duke of Rivington, take Isabella Lane as your lawful wife? I do, he said without hesitation. And do you, Miss Lane? Isabella looked at him. For a second, for an eternity, she wondered if she was really doing this. Marrying a man who didn't want her. Who saw her as a solution. But then she thought of her sister. Of the cruel world waiting for a woman alone. And she thought, though she wouldn't admit it, of that moment. That night. When he had held her tightly. When he said he had no illusions, but didn't despise her either. I do. And just like that, without a word of love. Without a caress, without a kiss, Isabella Lane became the Duchess of Rivington. The carriage rolled down the stone road toward the Duke's estate. Inside, silence reigned, tense and sharp. "I suppose congratulations are out of the question," said Alexander, breaking the silence with his deep voice. "Only if you're expecting a honeymoon," she replied. He barely turned to look at her. He was used to women swooning near him, not challenging him as if they were in a duel. "I promised you freedom within certain limits. I have no intention of forcing anything. This is a marriage of convenience, not passion. I'm relieved to know your grace doesn't believe in forced kisses," she said, eyes still on the window. Another thick silence. Until he said, almost in a whisper, "I've never forced a kiss in my life. Especially not with you." She turned, surprised. "Is that a warning, or a promise?" He smiled. "Just a little. That, dear Duchess, is up to you." When they arrived at the estate, Isabella found a majestic mansion surrounded by perfectly trimmed gardens, and a staff who looked at her as if she were a meteorite fallen in the yard. And amid all that luxury, something unexpected. "A child. Thomas," said Alexander, kneeling as the boy ran toward him. "Come say hello to your new mother." Isabella blinked. Mother? The child, no more than 5 years old, stopped in front of her with curiosity. He had the same dark hair as Alexander, but large, frightened eyes. "Are you my new mama?" he asked with a trembling voice. Isabella knelt to meet him and, for the first time that day, smiled gently. "I don't know if I'm a new mama, but if you want, I can be an old friend." Thomas smiled shyly. Then, without another word, took her hand. Alexander watched them silently, not moving, with a shadow of something on his face. Something that might have been relief or fear. Because for the first time in years, someone had entered his life without asking permission. And for a man like him, that was far more dangerous than scandal. Chapter 4 Welcome to the Fire. 3 days after the wedding, London. The pamphlets called it the most uncomfortable event of the year. A reception in honor of the new Duchess of Rivington. A formal dinner. Reluctantly organized by Alexander, not because he enjoyed social events, but because he knew London society was like a hungry beast. If you didn't feed it with appearances, it would devour you with gossip. The grand hall at 14 Grosvenor Square gleamed with crystal chandeliers, fine porcelain tables, and floral arrangements as ostentatious as the guests. But despite the shine, the atmosphere was as warm as a winter cave. Isabella descended the staircase with steady poise, though her hands were sweating beneath her gloves. She wore a deep burgundy gown that brought out her pale skin and contrasted with the blush of her nerves. Everyone was watching her. Everyone. Not like you watch a duchess, but like you study an anomaly. As if her very presence challenged the rules of the game. Lady Henrietta Woodrow gripped her fan like a weapon. Lord Pembroke pretended to sip his drink to avoid greeting her. The débutantes stared with a mix of horror and fascination, as if she'd crawled out from under the table instead of walking down the aisle. "So that's the governess?" someone near the piano whispered. "They say she has noble blood, but ruined. Please. Noble like a bird in a gilded cage. The Duke only married her because he got caught in the act." Isabella smiled, and kept walking as if the whispers were background music. She held her head high, pretended not to hear, and greeted each lady as if she were the Empress of Austria. If she'd learned anything as a governess, it was how to seem harmless and unstoppable. Alexander met her at the foot of the stairs, a drink in his hand, wearing the expression of a man who'd rather be in an interrogation room. "You're late," he murmured. "Just enough for you to miss me." He offered a discreet smile. "Very discreet. Get ready. Tonight, everyone will taste you, like a new dish on the menu. Then I hope a few of them choke." Dinner was a battlefield fought with silverware. Questions came dressed as courtesy. And Isabella's answers were silk, soft, but edged with steel. Duchess, how does it feel to be the center of attention? I'm not. I'm just the new toy London wants to break. Do you have experience organizing charity events? Of course. For years. I organized teas with the Halberton children. What they lack in fortune, they make up for in dignity. And have you adjusted to this level of living? This level? Believe me, the silence of a well-stocked library is more luxurious than any golden carriage. Alexander watched each reply with growing curiosity. How could such a young woman face the world with such poise, and a tongue as sharp as it was delightful? But not everyone in the room was interested only in her wit. Toward the end of the evening, a familiar face approached. Lord Ashford, an old acquaintance of the Duke. Glass in hand, poisoned smile. Duchess, welcome to the jungle. Thank you, my lord. I've already noticed some growl more than they bite. Ashford laughed. You know, my dear, the Duke doesn't usually share. Not words. Not feelings. Some of us thought he'd marry a shadow before marrying a real woman. Then I'm glad to have surprised so many. Even my husband. Ashford nodded and walked away. But Isabella noticed the subtle change in Alexander's face. A slower blink. A tight line in his jaw. Who is he? She whispered. No one important. The Duke replied. A lie. She felt it. And that night, once the mansion returned to silence, Isabella wandered the halls like a restless soul. She climbed to the library, her refuge, and lit an oil lamp. Among the shelves, she found a forgotten letter hidden inside a book on military history. It was signed by someone with the initials C. M. And it spoke of a debt of honor. A broken promise. Something that happened in Spain. Isabella held the paper with trembling hands. Who was C. M.? And why was this letter hidden, as if it burned? She closed the book gently. The Duke had secrets. And if she was to share his name, she would also claim his truth. Chapter 5 Secrets in the Shadows. The library at Rivington Hall was the only place Isabella could breathe. Most nights, while the rest of the house slept, she lit an oil lamp, wrapped herself in a blue wool shawl, and took shelter among books and thoughts she wasn't supposed to have. That night was no exception. She had the letter. She had read it so many times she could recite it by heart. It wasn't your fault. But the promise was yours. You said you would return. He believed you. I did too. C. M. The handwriting was firm, unadorned, as if the words had been written with controlled rage. Isabella wasn't sure whether to read it as a threat or a confession. Or both. Suddenly, the creak of a door made her turn. Alexander. He wore a dark velvet robe. His hair slightly tousled. As if he'd just woken or hadn't slept at all. Can't sleep? He asked. His voice low and fitting the dimness. Curiosity. She answered, too obviously hiding the letter behind her back. And what sparks your curiosity? My lady? Roman history, or your husband's? She didn't answer. He stepped closer. Like a hunter approaching prey he didn't want to scare. Do I bother you? He murmured, standing right in front of her. Only when you pretend not to care, Isabella said without flinching. He paused, looked into her eyes. Too close. Too quiet. I care more than you think. He whispered. Then tell me. Who is C. M.? Why do they write as if you failed someone? What promise didn't you keep? Alexander closed his eyes for a moment. A muscle in his jaw tensed. Not everything you find in this house belongs to you, he said in a controlled voice. Not everything you hide protects you, she replied, steady. And in that instant, the tension shifted. From anger to desire. From cold to warmth. Like two magnets, first repelling, then pulled together with frightening force. Alexander raised his hand, almost absent-mindedly, and brushed the stray lock of hair from Isabella's forehead. She didn't pull away. I don't know when I stopped seeing you as an intruder. he whispered. But tonight, it's impossible not to see you. And you're still impossible to read. She replied, trembling. Their lips were so close, only a breath apart. But then, a tiny voice interrupted. Papa, they stepped apart as if shoved. Thomas stood at the doorway, dragging a blanket behind him. Eyes wide and wet. I had a nightmare. Alexander went to him immediately. Kneeling down. What was it about? Getting lost. I was alone in a forest. And no one came to find me. Isabella felt a knot in her chest. Before she could think, she was kneeling too. That won't happen, Thomas, she said softly. You have a big house now. A slightly grumpy father, and me. And I do know how to yell if I have to. Thomas giggled and reached out his arms. Isabella picked him up naturally, while Alexander watched in silence. Can I sleep with you tonight? The boy asked, curled against her chest. Of course you can, she said, stroking his hair. But only if you don't snore louder than your father. I don't snore, Alexander protested. I'll find out tonight, Isabella replied with a teasing smile. As they walked down the hallway toward the bedrooms, Alexander stood still, watching them. That woman, she was stepping into his life like a quiet flame. It wasn't the passion that scared him. It was the real possibility of feeling something again. And Alexander Blackthorn, the invincible Duke of Rivington, wasn't sure he was ready for that. Chapter 6: The Unwelcome Visit. Rivington Hall. 5 days after the wedding. The morning dawned under a heavy mist. As if the sky sensed what was about to happen. Isabella had just finished her morning walk with Thomas. The boy had taken her hand naturally, telling her about invisible dragons and floating castles. And for the first time in a long while, Isabella felt light, almost happy, until she heard the sound of hooves and the arrival of a black carriage with golden fittings. When she came down to the foyer, the butler wore an expression caught between politeness and dread. An unexpected visitor. Your Grace, he said, with a slight tremor. Lady Cassandra Montrose. The name fell like a bucket of ice water. Isabella didn't know her, but the staff's reaction was enough to understand everything. She mattered. And she wasn't here in peace. The woman who entered the drawing room was magnificent. Tall, slender, in a pearl gray dress straight out of a painting. She wore a black veiled hat and lace gloves that she didn't remove to greet anyone. Your Grace, she said in a syrupy voice. At last, I have the pleasure of meeting you. Isabella smiled like a seasoned actress. She knew a predator when she saw one. Lady Montrose. What an unexpected honor. I thought it necessary to visit an old acquaintance, she said, glancing meaningfully toward the staircase, where Alexander had just appeared. The tension was immediate. Alexander didn't move. Cassandra. Alexander, she replied, with a crooked smile. No tea for me? Or do you only serve that to governesses turned duchesses? Isabella felt the blow but didn't show it. She simply raised an eyebrow with calm precision. Here. I serve the tea. But if you're looking for poison, you might prefer Mayfair. Cassandra narrowed her eyes. She realized Isabella wasn't a parlor doll. And that, to her, was a personal insult. Alexander, she continued, without permission. I heard about your wedding from the scandal sheets. I thought I should confirm it with my own eyes. It's still hard to picture you married, and so far beneath you. Isabella rose to her feet. Lady Montrose, if you came to insult my husband, I'm afraid you're too late. That privilege belongs to me alone. Alexander nearly choked on the air. Cassandra's lips tightened, caught off guard by the unexpected fire. Ah. She has spirit. How interesting. Enough to defend what is mine, Isabella said. Even if I don't consider people possessions. The air was razor sharp. Cassandra turned to Alexander. Her voice lower now. I only came out of courtesy, Alex. But it would be a shame if a certain letter reached the wrong hands. Don't you think? Isabella noticed it. The subtle shift. The pallor. The silence. That letter. She knew it. C. M. Cassandra Montrose. But what exactly did it say? And why did it hold him prisoner? Chained by invisible shackles? Alexander replied with steel in his tone. If you came here to blackmail me, Cassandra, you just crossed a dangerous line. Blackmail? Oh no. Just a friendly warning. And with that poisonous smile, she offered Isabella a minimal curtsy and vanished the way she came, leaving behind expensive perfume and venom in the air. Later that day, in the library, Isabella confronted him. Are you going to tell me who she was? Or should I keep reading letters hidden in books? Alexander didn't respond right away. He stood facing the fire, his face in shadow. She was part of my past. A mistake I tried to bury. And the letter? A reminder that some mistakes last longer than promises. Isabella stepped closer until she was standing in front of him. I'm married to you, Alexander. Not to your silences. If anything breaks this marriage, it won't be a titleless governess. It'll be your ghosts. He looked at her. And for 1 second, the Duke of Rivington looked small. I know. He said nothing more. But that night, Isabella knew she had found a crack. And beneath it, a truth waiting to shatter everything. Chapter 7 Clues. Gunpowder. And a charming libertine, Rivington Hall. 3 days after Lady Montrose's visit, Isabella hadn't slept well since. Not because of Alexander, though that was its own topic, nor Thomas, who now insisted on reading by candlelight. No. This time it was the letter. That woman. And the absolute certainty that the Duke was hiding more than an old romance. The name at the bottom, C. M. was no longer just ink on paper. It was a growing shadow. So when the Marquis of Roden arrived at Rivington Hall, the Duke's close friend and society's most charming libertine, Isabella felt that perhaps, just perhaps, her opportunity had arrived. The Marquis was everything Alexander wasn't. Talkative, provocative, utterly charming, with a smile that seemed to apologize for his existence, but never for his intentions. Your Grace, he said with exaggerated flourish when he saw her in the gallery. The Duke spoke of you so coldly. I feared he'd married a statue. I had to see for myself if it was a woman or marble. And you speak with so much fragrance. One suspects you came to sell perfume, Isabella replied. Sharp as ever. Roden laughed. Ah. I like you. But don't worry. I'm not here to steal your husband. He's banned me from his affections since 1809. Spain? The Marquis paused. Just for a second. But it was enough. What do you know about Spain? Your Grace? Only what's kept from me. Which is, of course, far too much. Curious. Brave. And married to a man who locks his secrets away. What a dangerous mix. Will you help me find the key? My lord? Roden studied her carefully. That blend of fire and grace was rare. Depends. Are you willing to pay the price? What is it? The truth. And that, he added, more softly, doesn't always save a marriage. Isabella didn't reply. But her silence was enough. That night, Roden appeared in the library with a small bundle wrapped in linen. This never existed, he said, handing it to her. It was written by Elias Blackthorn, Alexander's brother. He died in Spain. Or so we all thought. Isabella opened the letter with trembling hands. Not so different from Cassandra's. But this one spoke of something else. Alex, if you're reading this, it means I survived. I won't return home. I can't. Not after what happened in Burgos. Not after what you did. But I'll make sure someone learns the truth. Elias, Isabella felt the air leave her lungs. What happened in Burgos? No one knows. Only that Alexander returned alone, and Elias was declared dead. But if there are more letters, more clues, maybe he isn't. And Cassandra knows. And now, so do you. A knock on the door interrupted them. Alexander. What are you doing here? He asked. Voice low but icy. Talking to your wife, Roden answered calmly. She doesn't bite. Well, only if deserved. Leave us. Roden bowed. Dramatic as always. At your lordship's command, and her grace's. Good luck with the storm. Isabella remained alone with her husband. He said nothing. Only looked at her with those gray eyes that said too much. Are you going to deny you have a missing brother? She asked. Silence. Are you going to keep hiding what happened in that war? Silence. Are you going to look at me like I'm the enemy? When I'm the only person in this house who isn't trying to destroy you? He stepped forward. Then again. In you, Isabella? He said, voice tense. Are you going to keep stripping me bare while refusing to open your own doors? What do you want to know? Why don't you cry when you're hurt? Why don't you complain when they attack you? And why? Damn it. Do you keep walking into the fire even when it burns you? She stood very still. Because no one has ever saved me. Alexander. So I learned to dance in the fire. Silence. Long. Heavy. And then he took another step. And kissed her. Not as punishment. Not as apology. But as a man who had been silencing his soul for years, and was finally screaming without words. But when they pulled apart, Isabella said what he feared most. I'm going to find your brother. Alexander. And if he's still alive, I will find him. Chapter 8 Drawing Room Spies. London. Social season. Just another Tuesday. Or so it seemed. The Rivingtons' carriage stopped in front of Lady Dorothea Finch's mansion, a twice-widowed woman feared by men and adored by women who knew how to laugh at themselves. Isabella stepped down with steady poise. She wore a deep blue gown embroidered with silver thread. A deliberate choice. Modest yet unforgettable. Elegant. But sharp. Like her. Alexander watched her from the carriage. He was used to being the center of attention. But since Isabella had become his wife, all eyes turned to her instead. And not all of them were kind. Remember, he murmured before they entered. Here. Everyone smiles out of courtesy and stabs for sport. Perfect. She replied calmly. I'm tired of just being a wife. Tonight. I'll be a spy. A what? He arched a brow. You'll see. Lady Dorothea's salon was a hive of expensive perfume. Poorly kept secrets. And champagne. Men in flawless suits. Women with fans as sharp as blades. And there she was, Lady Dorothea Finch, in black. Feathers in her hair. Martini in hand. Ah. The famous governess who snared London's most reluctant duke. She exclaimed with a fierce grin. Come, darling. I must scrutinize you without shame. Isabella curtsied with grace. And I need allies with memory and without fear. Dorothea laughed. I like you. And what do you seek in my lair? Duchess? A new dress or a fresh scandal? I'm looking for someone who knew Elias Blackthorn. The widow stopped laughing. That, I didn't expect. You knew him, didn't you? I loved him. To be exact. Briefly. Intensely. And like all good things, it ended with a letter that said, I won't return. Isabella produced a copy of the letter Roden had given her. Dorothea read it slowly. This handwriting, it's not what he wrote to me. It's shakier. More bitter. More alive. Do you believe he's alive? I don't know. But if he is, he doesn't want Alexander to find out. While Isabella and Dorothea spoke in private. On the other side of the room, Lady Cassandra Montrose smiled sweetly at a group of young ladies. Poor Isabella, she said. So brave. And yet so unsuited to a duchess's life. Have you noticed how she walks like she's not even wearing a corset? How charmingly vulgar. One debutante giggled. Another whispered into her friend's ear. Cassandra smiled. She had already spread the idea that the marriage was a sham. That the Duke slept in a separate wing of the house. Lies. Of course. But in London, well-dressed lies always found an audience. That night, back at Rivington House, Alexander broke the silence. What were you plotting with Dorothea? Information. For what? To help you. What if I don't want your help? Then you shouldn't kiss me like you do. He said nothing. She didn't press. But when they arrived home, a letter without a seal lay on the silver tray in the vestibule. Just 3 handwritten words. The ink smudged. Don't trust him. Isabella read it, and felt a chill. Who? Alexander approached. And when he saw the handwriting, he paled. It's from Elias. Chapter 9 Shadows of the Past. Rivington House. Silent dawn. The letter lay on the mahogany table. Just 3 words. Just a few drops of ink. Don't trust him. Did your brother send it? Isabella asked softly. Alexander rubbed his face. For the first time since she met him. He wasn't the proud duke or the man of steel. He was just a man, wounded. It's his handwriting. But it can't be him. Elias is dead. I saw. Saw what? Silence. Alexander, what did you see? He looked at her. Just long enough for her to know there was more. Something he wouldn't say. I can't. He whispered. You can't, or you won't. He stood. Stepped away. Hands in his pockets. Soul in pieces. Because if I tell you, you'll never look at me the same. And I'd rather have your scorn than your pity. The next day, Isabella visited Lady Dorothea again, secretly. In Roden's carriage. Who gladly offered to be her accomplice. The city is boiling with rumors. Darling, Dorothea said as she poured tea. Cassandra claims the marriage was never consummated. That Alexander sleeps in a separate room and you're just a facade. Isabella pressed her lips together. And the letter? The handwriting is real, said Roden. But it was written with the left hand. I compared it to an old letter from Elias. The stroke matches, only if the writer was trying to mask it. So someone wants us to believe Elias is alive? Or, Dorothea added, that Alexander is lying. And that's the seed Cassandra wants to plant. Why? Because she still wants him. Dear. And women like Cassandra can't stand to lose what they think belongs to them. That night, Isabella found Alexander in the library. Alone. Drink in hand. Staring into the fire. Do you remember what you said? He murmured. That you learned to dance in the fire? I do. I didn't dance. I froze, and the fire took my brother. She approached. Sat in front of him. Waited. Burgos was a trap. He finally said. We were promised safe passage. We were betrayed. I made the decision to advance. Elias volunteered to cover our retreat. He said he'd catch up. I left him. It's not your fault, isn't it? Then why do I still hear his voice every night? Why can't I sleep without whiskey? Why did I marry you hoping you'd hate me, so I wouldn't have to ask for forgiveness? Isabella's heart cracked. Because behind every layer of arrogance and silence was a man in ruins. Maybe forgiveness isn't mine to give. She whispered. Maybe you owe it to yourself. He looked at her, like he couldn't believe someone was still there. Facing him. After so much truth. Isabella, if Elias is alive, I don't know if I want to find him. I do. She said. Because if anyone can save you from yourself, it's him. Elsewhere in London. Lady Cassandra Montrose smiled as she handed a new envelope to a messenger. Make sure it reaches the morning press. Publish it as anonymous, but include every word. The headline she had planned left no room for doubt. The Duke of Rivington. A marriage of scandal and a wife without honor. With that, Isabella would fall. And Alexander would need her again. Because Cassandra didn't want to destroy him. She wanted to own him. Chapter 10 The Fall of Silence. The most talked about marriage of the season is once again making headlines. According to anonymous sources, the new Duchess of Rivington seduced the Duke with less than noble intentions. Sparking scandal after an improper encounter, and buying her title through blackmail. Morning Press. Early edition. The paper crackled between Alexander's fingers. He stood in his study. Windows open. Curtains flaring in the breeze. The newspaper on the table. And poison printed inside it. Isabella hadn't said a word since she read it. She had simply left it on the breakfast tray and gone upstairs to dress. He found her at her vanity, fastening the clasps of her dress. Her face calm, but her eyes more resolute than ever. Where are you going? He asked. To walk among wolves. She answered. To show them I don't bleed. Alexander closed the door. You don't have to do this alone. I don't need a guardian. Number. But I need to be one. For you. Lady Dorothea hosted a luncheon attended by all of proper London. Journalists. Countesses. Wealthy merchants. Board ambassadors. And one sleepy archbishop. And there, in the middle of the room, Isabella appeared. No jewelry. No escort. No permission. She wore a plain white dress. As if to say I have nothing to hide. She walked with her spine straight and her chin high. As if scandal were nothing more than a mild inconvenience. Conversation stopped. Eyes followed her like sharpened blades. Lady Cassandra, flawless in a lavender gown with ostrich feathers, lifted her glass with a snake's smile. Brave of you to show up. Dear. Isabella met her gaze. Smiled sweetly. Funny, rats usually run when they smell fire. What are you still doing here? There were stifled laughs. Some held their breath. I only told the truth. Cassandra replied. Yours. Maybe. I've come to tell mine. Without asking for permission. Isabella stepped onto the staircase and addressed the crowd. London has spoken. Whispered. Written. So I'll allow something few here can tolerate. I will be heard. A hushed silence. I wasn't born in silk. I didn't debut among gilded salons. But I learned to walk among you. I learned to stay quiet when mocked. To smile when ignored. And now, I refuse to kneel. Isabella, enough? Cassandra shouted. Standing. But before she could move, Alexander appeared. He crossed the room with firm steps. His face harder than stone. He wore black, just like on their wedding day. Only this time. There was no obligation. Only choice. He stood beside Isabella, took her hand, and spoke. Those who question my marriage should question their own courage. I chose this woman. Not because of scandal. Not because of duty. I chose her because she is stronger than all of you combined. A wave of murmurs. And if anyone dares stain her name, they'll face me first. Dead silence. The Duchess of Rivington doesn't need to defend herself. But this time, she will. And I will be at her side. That night, back home, Isabella slipped off her shoes in the library. You know what? She said, sinking into the sofa. I think I could have hit Cassandra with my fan and no one would have blamed me. I'm sure you'd have done it elegantly. Alexander replied. Sitting beside her, they sat in silence. The kind that doesn't hurt. The kind that feels like home. Today I saw you. He said. Really saw you. And? You didn't scare me. You gave me hope. She looked at him. Alexander, I love you. Isabella. I don't know when it started. But I won't pretend anymore. She didn't reply at once. She simply embraced him. Tightly. As if she'd been waiting for this moment since day one. Chapter 11 The Echo of the Dead. If you seek Elias Blackthorn, he is not dead. But he does not wish to be found. Anonymous fragment received at Rivington House. Sealed in red wax. It was early morning when Isabella received the envelope. No sender. No family crest. Only a malformed 5-pointed star in the seal, symbol of a group of deserters, men forgotten by the crown after the campaigns in Spain. She recognized it thanks to Dorothea, who had once mentioned the Brotherhood of Mourning. Veterans lost in combat, or who chose to disappear. When Alexander read the message, he held it like it might explode. He's alive, he said, voice breaking. God, Elias is alive. And what will you do? What I never did before. I'll look for him. The next morning, Alexander met with the Marquis of Roden and a contact from the War Office, Colonel Ashcroft. A curt man with rough manners and a shadowed past. The symbol means someone from the group knows how to reach Elias, said Ashcroft. But they won't move without guarantees. Not for you, not for your name. What do they want? Immunity. Money. And silence. They'll have whatever they ask. Just bring me my brother. Meanwhile, across the city, Lady Cassandra Montrose received a hooded man inside her closed carriage. Did you deliver it? Yes. My lady. The message reached the Duke. Perfect, she said, crossing her legs with elegance. The game just changed. And the next step? She smiled, dark and dangerous. Alexander's brother is alive, but he's no hero. And I have the proof to destroy him, both of them. When Isabella learned of the meeting with Ashcroft, she asked to join. No. Alexander said firmly. I won't risk you. I'm not a decoration. I'm your wife. And Elias is part of my life now too. Alexander looked at her. Not like someone needing to protect, but like a man finally ready to share the weight. All right, he said at last. But if things go wrong, promise me you'll run without looking back. I don't know how to do that, she replied. But I'll try to scream while I run. He laughed for the first time in days. 2 nights later, in an alley behind a secret club, Alexander and Isabella, joined by Roden and Ashcroft, met a man in a worn military cloak. He had a scar above his left brow. And a letter in his hand. This is all he left me. He said if anyone ever came looking, give this to the man who carries the weight of 2 graves. The letter was addressed to A. Blackthorn. Left hand. Eternal pain. Alexander opened it with trembling fingers. Alex. I'm not ready to look you in the eye. I don't know if I ever will be. But I'm not dead. Not yet. And when the time comes, I'll come to you. Don't look for me. Don't force me. Because if you do, you'll lose everything. Elias. Alexander stood in silence. The wind stung his skin. But inside, something else burned. Isabella stepped closer. Took his hand. Whatever happened between you, only you understand it. But whatever comes now, you don't have to face it alone. And for the first time, the Duke didn't run. He didn't argue. He simply leaned on her. Literally. As if letting go of the weight was the only way to keep breathing. From a dark balcony, Lady Cassandra watched them through an opera spyglass. She wasn't alone. Beside her, a man with dark eyes and a rough beard lit a cigarette. That's it? He asked. No, she replied. That's the beginning. When Elias learns what I'm about to reveal, he'll return on his own. And Alexander? Alexander will lose everything. His title. His honor. His wife. And what do you gain from it? What I should have had all along. Him. Chapter 12 Blood. Betrayal. And lineage. London. War Ministry offices. 5 days after Elias's letter, a sealed envelope arrived at the minister's desk. It was addressed to the Royal Council of Noble Titles. It had an annex. And a copy sent to the morning press. Hours later, all of London woke to the same headline. Title usurper? Alexander Blackthorn may not be the true Duke of Rivington. It will sealed in blood and backed by military witnesses. Isabella read the headline and felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. Alexander didn't react. He simply stood, walked to the window, and closed his eyes. What is this? She asked. He took his time to answer. My father was cruel. Not just to me. To Elias too. Before he died, he turned us against each other. He did everything to ensure one of us would destroy the other. And now, it seems he succeeded. The published letter, written by a former military notary, claimed that the rightful heir to the dukedom was not Alexander, but Elias. That their father, Lord Cedric Blackthorn, had altered the will, erasing his eldest son's name after a family dispute. That the original document had been hidden by a military officer, now terminally ill, who decided to reveal the truth. Lady Cassandra Montrose was named as the protector of the original will. Are you saying, Isabella asked, her voice trembling, that the title isn't yours? I'm saying, it's possible I'm not the rightful duke. Silence. And if it's true? Then I've built my entire life on a lie. And if it's not? then someone is willing to destroy me to reclaim what they believe is theirs. Lady Cassandra held a private meeting with the most influential members of the peerage. I always knew something didn't add up, she said. Dressed in black lace and poisonous perfume, the true Duke was betrayed. His brother, Alexander, took his place, with the help of corrupt soldiers and paid silence. And how do you know this? Asked Lord Fenwick, skeptical. Cassandra smiled. Because I have the document, sealed in blood and witnessed. And because Elias Blackthorn gave it to me before he vanished. That night, Isabella confronted Alexander. Did you know? No, he replied, not until now. And if it's true? What if all of this was built by stealing what belonged to Elias? He looked up at her. Would you stay with me, if I'm not the Duke? She stayed silent. I'm not with you for the title, she finally said. I'm with you for who you are when you stop hiding. He stepped closer. Took her hand. But if I lose the title, I'll lose everything. The land. The inheritance. Rivington Hall, am I part of everything? You are the only thing I care about keeping. In the shadows of the city, a man sat in a train carriage, reading the paper. The same scar ran over his left brow. In his hands, a medallion bearing the Blackthorn crest. He closed it. You ruined everything. Alex, he whispered. But I won't let that viper destroy what's left. Elias Blackthorn, with a grown beard and storm-filled eyes, was back. Chapter 13 The Face of Return. Sometimes the enemy is not the one who hurt you. It's the one who survived your absence. The letter came without a seal. Just a place and time. Marlowe's abandoned station. 4 o'clock sharp. No escorts. Only you. Isabella felt the chill before she even read the signature. E. Blackthorn, she told no one. Not because she didn't trust Alexander, but because she sensed this wasn't something that could be faced with witnesses. Sometimes, the truth only reveals itself when no one else is watching. The station was deserted, rusting with time. The clock no longer worked. But he did. Elias Blackthorn stood there, coat buttoned, hat low, leaning against a column of iron. His face was the worn reflection of his brother. Thinner, harder, darker. Isabella, he said without emotion. I knew you'd be the one to come. How did you know? Because you're the only one with something to lose and something to prove. She didn't flinch. Why now? Elias? Why come back after all these years? He walked slowly toward her. No rush. As if each step had been counted. Because it's time for London to know what was done. What was taken from me? By your brother? My brother? He laughed. But there was no joy. The same one who left me behind in Burgos? The one who took my title. My lands. And. He stopped. And what else? Isabella asked softly. Elias looked at her. And for the first time, his eyes softened. Nothing else. That's all. Are you sure? Don't you believe he stole more than that? Silence. But he didn't deny it. And what do you want now? Elias? The dukedom? Revenge? I want justice. And you think justice comes in the form of public humiliation? By dragging your brother before the nobility and destroying him? I didn't ask for this, he said with bitterness. Cassandra made it public. But I didn't stop it. Did I? No. Because part of me wanted it to hurt. For him, or for you? Isabella took a deep breath, stepped closer, and said firmly, Elias, we all thought you were dead. But you came back. And that gives you power. He looked intrigued. And what do you want from me? Duchess? I want you not to destroy Alexander just because of what you think he did. I want you to look beyond your wound. And not use the truth as a whip, but as a bridge. Elias narrowed his eyes. He wasn't used to being challenged or to compassion. Is this love speaking? Yes. And also justice. He paused. Reached into his pocket. A campaign medal. Blackened with time. He gave me this before he left me. When I thought I was going to die. And what does it mean? That even in his betrayal, he still believed I was worth returning. He handed it to Isabella. Give it to him. Let him remember. And tell him, I'm not here to steal his life. Then why? I'm here, so he'll admit that he stole mine. When Isabella left the station, the afternoon wind howled. She held the medal in her hand, and a storm in her chest. Because Elias was alive. And he wasn't a monster. But he wasn't a martyr either. He was a man with an open wound. And now, that wound was back in London. Chapter 14: The Weight of Truth. Truth doesn't always destroy. Sometimes, it reveals who's willing to stay when walking away would be easier. The carriage moved slowly through the wet streets. The London sunset fell like a broken promise. Isabella remained silent. She held the medal Elias had given her, heavy, worn, the lion's silhouette barely visible. It was the symbol of a brother who had survived death, and of a wound that still pulsed beneath the skin of the man she loved. When she entered Rivington House, Alexander was waiting in the library. You left without an escort, he said, not raising his voice. Again. She nodded. No excuses. I had to see someone. He looked at her, alert. Who? Isabella stepped closer. She didn't answer yet. She simply extended her hand and placed the medal on the table between them. Alexander stared at it. His expression changed. Not with surprise, but with recognition. Deep. Painful. Where did you get this? Elias gave it to me. Silence. The world seemed to stop. Even the clocks dared not move. Alexander sank into the nearest chair and covered his face with both hands. He's here? Yes. Did he hurt you? Number. But he didn't come back to reconcile. He just wants you to acknowledge what happened. Alexander lowered his hands slowly. His eyes weren't those of a duke. They were a boy's. A boy who had just lost something all over again. And what do you think happened? Isabella? She knelt before him and held his face. I think you were both broken boys. And your father turned you into enemies. I left him. Isabella. I abandoned him. And yet, he gave you this. That doesn't make him your enemy. It makes him a brother who can't forgive. But can't forget either. Alexander held her tightly, as if clinging to her might keep him from falling apart. Will you hate me when you see him? I saw him. And I didn't hate you. I understood you. That night. They didn't sleep. They talked. About Elias. About Burgos. About everything they had avoided for weeks. When dawn came, they were still in the library, sitting side by side, with the medal between them, symbol of all that had been lost and could still be saved. I have to face him, Alexander said at last. Yes, Isabella replied. And this time, you won't do it alone, but across the city, in a candlelit room full of silence. Elias Blackthorn received another visitor. Lady Cassandra Montrose. Did you speak to her? She asked. Pouring wine. Yes. And? I won't change what I know. Elias said. I'm not asking you to. Cassandra replied, stepping closer. Just remember who took everything from you and who can give it back. She handed him a document. Elias read it. His face hardened. This can't be true. It is. And if you reveal it yourself, no one can call you a coward. Only the rightful duke. Elias looked at her with a mix of contempt and need. What do we gain from this? I gain justice. And you gain the truth. The next encounter between brothers would no longer be just about the past. It would be about blood. About legacy. And about what it truly means to be a Blackthorn. Chapter 15: Inheritance before society. Some truths hide in whispers. Others must be shouted in golden halls so they can finally begin to heal. The London season ended with the grand ball hosted by the Earl of Hemsley. It was the event of the year. Counts, marquises, ambassadors, debutantes, and all the elite. And there, in the marble grand hall, among crystal chandeliers and string music, stood the key players. Alexander Blackthorn, the most talked about duke in the kingdom. Isabella, the unexpected duchess, and the most watched woman of the night. And Lady Cassandra Montrose, dressed in blood red, smiling like a dagger. Everything was in place. Are you sure about this? Alexander whispered to Isabella. Yes. Because if we don't face this now, the past will choose for us. Alexander took a deep breath, adjusted his cravat, and walked to the center of the room. Lord Hemsley, may I have a moment? The host, surprised, nodded. Alexander raised his voice. I have a declaration to make, not as a nobleman, but as a man. The room fell silent. Glasses froze in midair. And then, the double doors opened. A murmur rose like a wave. Elias Blackthorn entered, wearing a dark suit. No medals. No jewels. Only his name. And his scar, the one many believed mythical, was real. Proof of his story. He's not dead, whispered a baroness. Is the will real? What if? The air grew thick. Alexander stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Elias Blackthorn. My brother. My blood. And, perhaps the true Duke of Rivington. Gasps echoed around the hall. Lady Cassandra smiled. Venomous. At last. The truth is out. She cried, raising a folder with the original will. The Council of Noble Titles already has a copy. Elias is the rightful heir. Alexander is a fraud. And what are you? Isabella asked, stepping forward. A friend, or just an opportunist? Silence. Woman, snapped Cassandra, losing control. This room is no place for daughters of nobodies. A scandalized murmur filled the space. But Elias raised his hand. Enough. Everyone turned to him. I didn't return to claim a chair. I came to look my brother in the eyes. Alexander walked closer, face to face. Absolute silence. I failed you, he said plainly. And I've carried it every damn day. If the title belongs to you, I'll give it back. But first, I need to know if I still have a brother. Not a title. A brother. Elias looked at him for a long moment. Then, with a rough voice, said, You took a dukedom. But you saved my life. And you gave me something more valuable. A reason to return. I don't want your land. I want my place. By your side. A collective sigh filled the hall. Elias extended his hand. Alexander took it. And for the first time in over a decade, the Blackthorns were one again. Lady Cassandra, pale as a statue, dropped the documents to the floor. This can't end like this. I was right. Isabella turned to her. And that's why you lost. Because you sought vengeance, and they chose forgiveness. Two council guards approached Cassandra quietly. It seemed the will hadn't been delivered, but stolen. The ball resumed. The music returned. But something had changed. It was no longer Alexander and Isabella against the world. Now they were the Blackthorns. Together. Flawed. Human. But whole at last. And among the crowd. As the waltz began, Alexander took Isabella's hand and said, Thank you for being the only one who saw me, even when I couldn't see myself. She smiled. I didn't see a duke. I saw the man behind the title. And do you still like him? I adore him. And they danced. As if the world hadn't tested them. As if the past no longer hurt. As if love had finally won. Epilogue, where forever begins. Love doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it just breathes, between wrinkled sheets and trembling hands that refuse to let go. The storm had passed. Not in London, where people still whispered about the ball, but in their bodies. In their souls. In the bed where Isabella and Alexander lay that night. After everything, he looked at her as if she were a secret he no longer wanted to hide. She. As if she could finally breathe without fearing she might lose him. I never thought someone would choose me, knowing all that I am. He said, voice raw. And I never thought I could love someone this deeply without needing to be rescued. Their bodies found each other. Not with urgency. but with devotion. Alexander's hands moved down her back like map in prayer. His lips traced her neck, her collarbone, her soul. And she received him like someone who was no longer a promise but a home. "I want to give you a lifetime," he whispered, entering her as if each motion erased an old fear. "You already did," she whispered back. "You just didn't know it." They made love as if time didn't exist. As if they had already been everything. Strangers. Enemies. Allies. Lovers. And now. Finally. One. Hours later. With the fire still burning in the hearth, Alexander held a glass of wine and gazed out the window. Isabella, naked, wrapped in only a sheet, sat beside him. "Do you think Elias will stay?" "I don't know. But this time, I won't force him." "That's love too." He looked at her and smiled. "And you? What do you want now?" "Isabella Blackthorn?" She thought for a moment. "I want to write my own story. Maybe travel. Maybe reclaim something I lost. Maybe bring someone else into this house." "Who?" She looked at him. Serious now. "My sister." Alexander tensed slightly. "The one who was sent to live with your aunt in the country?" "Yes." "Luciana. She was never happy in that house. And now that I have a place in this world, I want her to have one too." "Luciana? Is she the redhead who looked at me like she could kill me with a single glance at our wedding?" Isabella chuckled softly. "That's the one." Alexander frowned. "God help us if one of my friends sets eyes on her. Or if she sets hers on one of them." And so, without knowing it, the love story of another rake was already beginning, maybe with a lady who had no filters. Or a past darker than all of theirs combined. But that is another story. And it's just about to begin. Thank you for joining me in this beautiful story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did sharing it with you. If you liked it, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Whispers by Maga Audiobooks, so you won't miss any of my upcoming stories. See you next time, and may the magic always be with you.